What's going on, guys? MoneyGuy here, and today I'm back with another Storytime video. So today's story, it's going to be a bit of a long one because if any of you guys have seen my band story, it's going to be sort of like that, where this is sort of just a collection of stories put into one. So I hope you guys enjoy. Now, this story takes place during high school, and specifically it involves my school's Spanish department. So, as I'm pretty sure everyone in high school did, you had to take a language class. For my school, you had the options of either Spanish, German, or French. And me being Mexican and me wanting to get an easy A, I obviously took Spanish as the class. Now, I didn't take Spanish freshman year because I took band freshman year and I didn't have enough electives to fit Spanish in there, so I took Spanish my sophomore year. And so basically, something to know about me and my Spanish is that I could have taken, at the beginning of the year, my counselor told me I could take a test and be put into a higher Spanish class because I was starting at Spanish 1. But the thing is, my Spanish is very scuffed, to say the least. Now, when I say that, I mean that, I'm very good at listening. I can understand, 90% of Spanish that is said, but I'm not the best when it comes to speaking and writing. And reading, I'm, okay at as well. But, yeah, when it comes to speaking, I'm okay. Writing, yeah, I never write in Spanish, so there you go. That's why I decided I didn't want to take the test and just actually learn to be better at Spanish. So yeah. So in Spanish 1, I had this Spanish teacher. I forget his name, but he was pretty young. When I saw, he was pretty young to be a Spanish teacher. And he was also new from what I heard. So he was I don't know his exact age, but he looked to be in his mid to late 20s, if I had to guess. And so basically he was the Spanish teacher for about, I'd say 3 weeks, and then out of nowhere he just one day we had this substitute teacher, and we were wondering oh, what happened to Mr. I don't know, let's call him Mr. Sparks, and she was oh, Mr. Sparks had to take a absent of leave, and we were confused because she didn't say he was sick or he had to go visit someone. And so basically when we had the substitute teacher for a week and he didn't show up, everyone was very confused. And it wasn't until that week later that our whole class found out that he had actually been fired, because it turns out he was caught dating a girl at this, he was caught dating a girl at the school. He was caught dating a student at school. And now, he didn't end up getting into, legal trouble, I don't think, because, technically she was 18, she was a senior. But, I'm pretty sure dating a student as a teacher is, very against the rules, so he was obviously fired. And I remember that Spanish 1 class, we did not have a replacement Spanish teacher for about 3 months. Was it school started in September? So for September, October, November, and it was at the end of this, around the beginning of December, before winter break, is when we finally got an actual Spanish teacher. So those first 3 months of Spanish 1, we did absolutely nothing because we just had a substitute teacher that knew no Spanish. So all we did was look in our textbooks and like do worksheets. And now obviously it was like easy for me because I already like knew basic Spanish, but like for the other kids in our my class, like they just had no idea what was going on. The crazy thing too was that even after he got fired, he still he and the girl were actually still dating. I actually don't know what happened to. I feel like she got suspended or expelled, but I'm not 100% sure. Cause yeah, this was like 3 years ago, I believe, sophomore year. So yeah, it was just the whole situation was crazy. And luckily, our replacement Spanish teacher, she was very nice. She was a very good Spanish teacher, but unfortunately, she was only there for that 1 year because she sort of had to like fill in right away because obviously she didn't get like any like training or whatever, you know, because they just like needed an immediate Spanish teacher right away, or else we were like not gonna learn Spanish for the rest of the year. And so yeah, but that Spanish class was it was pretty fun, and I like the teacher because you see the thing about my Spanish specifically is that a lot of like kids in school, they will think that I know Spanish better than I actually do, but it's actually the opposite when it comes to like my family, like all my aunts, my uncles and stuff. They actually think I know less Spanish than I actually do. Like in in school, kids will always like try to ask me for help, or like, do you know how to say this word in Spanish or whatever, you know? And it's like sometimes I'll know it, yeah, but other times like, you know, because like I know Spanish, but I'm not like an expert at it. But then when I go to like family gatherings and stuff, they'll like when they talk to me, they'll use like super simple Spanish, and they'll even like try talking English for me. So now let's move on to Spanish 2. So my Spanish 2 teacher, she was fairly new there. She had just recently like gone to the school. I think only for like a couple years she's been there. And the previous year, like when I was in Spanish 1, she had only taught there a little bit that school year because she was pregnant, and so she was on like maternity leave. And so basically that next year, from what I heard, like a lot of the people in the classes, like a lot of people that had her as a Spanish teacher beforehand, they liked her, but then apparently she got like really like bitchy after she had her kid, is what like a lot of the previous Spanish students said that had her beforehand. And so when I had her, it was very not a good time, I would say, because like obviously like new Spanish, because she was a Spanish teacher, but I wouldn't say she was exactly like the best Spanish teacher. And the problem is that half of the kids that went from Spanish 1 to Spanish 2 didn't know that much Spanish. Like the week did not get through the Spanish 1 curriculum because of the obvious situation that happened the year before. And so for Spanish 2, we had to relearn a lot of the Spanish 1 material. And so it wasn't until like halfway through the year did we actually like start learning Spanish 2 curriculum. And even when we got there, like a lot of the kids were really bad. You would think people would be bad at learning a second language already, but like we were extra bad because of like not having good teachers and not having the best like year 1 of Spanish anyways. And obviously I like cruised all through Spanish 1 and Spanish 2 just because it was very simple things. I knew all the vocabulary, and like I knew how to make basic sentence structures. So again, I breezed through easily, but it was very hard for everyone else. And like even when we got to learning some of the tougher things in Spanish, like even I got confused because it's not like my teacher was doing a very good job at it. And so yeah, my Spanish 2 experience was basically just relearning half of the things we did in Spanish 1, and then basically like just I felt like I didn't learn much at all. and it just felt like I was doing worksheets and vocab that I already knew. So yeah. Now, senior year, despite all of that, I decided to take Spanish 3, even though it wasn't required. But my senior year, I really just wanted senior year to be like a breeze, so I just took Spanish 3 for a couple reasons. It was mostly because like I wanted another easy A. I still wanted to like actually, because this whole time, if I wanted to learn a different language, because I was fluent in Spanish, I actually would have. Connor, best friend Connor, good guy Connor, he took French, right? And I totally would have taken French if I was confident enough in my Spanish. But no, I actually wanted to, learn and better my own Spanish. And so I decided to take Spanish 3. And the thing about my Spanish 3 class is my Spanish teacher was actually very good. She was transferred from a different school in Washington to our school. And basically, that was a good thing, because obviously our Spanish department didn't know what they were doing. Because here's another thing. My Spanish 2 teacher, she ended up getting pregnant again, and then she ended up quitting my senior year. So they hired a Spanish teacher, and then they transferred another Spanish teacher from a different high school. And so basically that Spanish 3 class was like very scuffed, because the classroom we were in didn't have any desks. So for the first 3 months of class, we were in a classroom with only chairs, and like we had to use clipboards or like just books to do worksheets and actually learn. It was very scuffed, and it was because we were in a previous classroom that belonged to my creative writing teacher that retired. And so they had to clear everything out, and they cleared all his literature, the books, the desk, because the desks were very old school. They were desks that were attached with chairs, and so they wanted to take those out and add new desks and new chairs just to match with every other classroom. Yeah, that was it was very scuffed. And but again, as I was saying, my Spanish teacher is actually good, but literally it was I think a month into that school year where the other Spanish teacher that they hired, she was so fed up with her class that she literally walked out during class. She didn't walk out during lunch, after the day was over, even call in and after her period was done. No, she literally walked out in the middle of class, and she basically just quit right there because she was so fed up with her students. And that was the drama all around school for that whole week, man. Because at this point, the principal didn't even know what to do. And so what basically ended up happening for that Spanish class, I'm pretty sure that was a Spanish 2 class that happened to. And they basically had to do the same thing that happened to me for Spanish 1, where they just brought in a substitute teacher that didn't know any Spanish at all and just had to try and keep the class in check. And basically for that year of Spanish 3, our Spanish teacher would have to sometimes she would go in to try and teach the Spanish 2 kids while we had a substitute teacher. And it was just, that whole year was also a mess. That whole Spanish department while I was at school was just so fucked on so many different levels. I never had a solid Spanish teacher, and I never even really got to learn Spanish. All I did was learn vocabulary and maybe know how to write some things better, but that's about it. The other time it was just vocab flashcards and like like you know how in school you get worksheets? In Spanish, I got a worksheet was there every single day. There was not one day where I didn't have a worksheet. And it was literally just the most annoying thing because I really feel for my senior year Spanish teacher because she was literally transferred there that year, and she just had to deal with all this bullshit that happened where the Spanish department basically has this very bad reputation. I don't know how it is now. I'm hoping that they got their things together, and I'm hoping they didn't hire another teacher that could potentially date a student, or one that's just gonna walk out during class, or one that doesn't get pregnant and then quits. Again, that there was just never a time where there was a solid Spanish teacher my whole time in high school. And it was just, I swear, it was like the easiest A of my life, but oh my, was it just, it was just a shithole, that whole situation. And so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this stories of my school's Spanish department being, I swear, if it isn't, it has to be the worst Spanish department of all time. I've never heard of this happening to anyone ever. So yeah, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this story. If you did, make sure to leave a like, and I hope to see you all for the next one. Peace.